Amway reports its biggest sales of all time. I'm Dennis Berman of the Wall Street Journal. We're here to have a big interview with Steve Van Andel and Doug DeVos, the chairman and president, respectively, of Amway. Thanks for being here, guys.
Great. Good to be here.
Look forward to our conversation. $10.9 billion in sales for 2011. A big number, probably the biggest in history.
Yeah.
Can you tell us where is that coming from? I think most of it's coming not from the U.S., but from abroad. Take us a little bit deeper into that number, if you could.
Well, it's been a great year for us, obviously. We've had 17% growth, which for this past year has been outstanding. I think the easiest thing to say is 90% of our business comes outside the U.S., but it kind of is still spread across the world because 9 of the top 10 markets are growing, including the U.S. So that goes whether it's in the European part of the world, the Asian part of the world, or the Americas. We're growing all around the globe.
Right. And so why is it growing? Is it the changes in economies in Asia, particularly in India and China, or even markets like Malaysia and Indonesia? Or is the bad economic times in some of the more Western democracies, is that having an impact? When you burrow down in your office and say, well, where does the 17% come from, what's the answer you get?
Well, really, it's kind of big picture. The Amway business opportunity still connects with the entrepreneurial spirit that people have all over the world.
Right.
There's a basic, inside all of us, a desire to aspire to something more, and a desire to have a business of your own. And we're able to connect with that in a way that's relevant in the marketplace today.
Right.
And like Steve said, we're growing in developed markets like the United States. We're growing in developing markets like India or Brazil or China. But there's still that same connection happens in all markets around the world. People are willing to work hard, and as a business, we're able to provide an opportunity that's still relevant for people to say, hey, this would be a way for me to get ahead.
Do you think, well, what have you learned about the work ethic abroad when you see people in India, China? To be honest, I kind of think that they are willing to work harder than people in the United States. I know that's probably impolitic to say, but they are, if you look at the GDP numbers, they are hungrier than we are in this country. What's your experience on that?
We really found that the entrepreneurs around the world work hard regardless of what market they're in. So we've seen them work hard in the U.S., we've seen them work hard in China and all over. And that really is what our focus tends to be, because we talk about the overall numbers and what the overall business is, but our focus really is on making sure that are helping our entrepreneurs become successful, because if our entrepreneurs are successful, then the overall business is successful.
So you're not going to say that people in China work harder than people in the U.S.?
No, everybody just works differently. They just work differently. It's a different environment.
So what's unique about a China salesperson compared to someone in the West? Have you noticed different ticks or different approaches from those Asian environments?
Well, we see differences in different cultures. The big thing is, I remember going into our first Eastern Bloc country, whether we thought ever the concept of the American dream is something that would translate into a different culture or a different system, a different market, wherever it was. But what we found is that there are people all over the world who really want to help themselves. They want to set goals for themselves. They want to become successful in their own right. And that seems to be mutual across every culture. And so if you go into China and you look at the way they work, they're doing it for the same reason somebody in the U.S. is. They're doing it to help themselves become successful.
Right. Talk to us a little bit about how you see the consumer products market. Obviously, Amway, for people who aren't familiar with everything it does, it sells largely consumer products through a direct selling sales force. What's happening right now? What we're seeing in the U.S. is quite interesting. Customers are actually trading down to lower price white branded goods. We see P&G struggling through a lot of times right now because consumers really don't want to spend for brand names. Why do they want to spend for even an Amway brand name when they can get something far cheaper at a Walmart or a local supermarket?
People really, when they look at spending their money, they look at spending it on value. They're looking to get value for whatever they spend. We think our products have a tremendous amount of value, especially when you look at the Nutrilite products and what the Nutrilite products the nutrition products can bring to your health. We think when people look at ours, they recognize that they're a product that brings value for what they're going to spend for it, and we find that all over the world.
And what have you found about pricing overall, particularly in the U.S. market? I mean, prices are being pushed down because consumers, they just don't want to spend on the brand name.
Well, and again, it all goes back to value. I think it depends a little bit on the types of product you have as well, because people are very willing to spend, I think, for beauty. They're very willing to spend to make sure they can ensure that they're healthy. They may not be quite as willing to spend as much to wash their clothes, but that's just what they're looking at.
Right. And what advice would you give to P&G and some of the other big consumer products companies? You're a private company. You can say whatever you want.
That's right. Yeah, we try to stay focused on our business, though. We try not to to get too far outside of ourselves and give others advice. Their models are very different than ours, but they, like us, have to identify, like Steve was saying, in the marketplace where people are seeing value in a product and what they have to do to deliver. And
have you
that's
noticed,
what we have to do.
Have you noticed any changes in consumer behavior that you're responding to in terms of developing products? I mean, what is today's consumer, if you had to paint a picture of, it's largely her, a female buyer. Who is this person?
Well, it's hard to paint that one picture because you're dealing with markets all over the world. But again, if you did try to generalize, it's people who want products or in our case a business opportunity to meet their lifestyle, their goals, where they're trying to go. It's very individualized. So if I'm trying to improve my health, if I'm trying to take care of my skin in a better way as a consumer, especially the female in the beauty area, they're looking at, okay, help me. I want some help. I want some personalized service. And that's where our business model really adds value to the products because the product information is there, the customer support and feedback and follow-up is there. We can give you the personal recommendations and help to make sure you're using the product correctly in a way that will give you the results that you're looking for. And so we try to expand the whole value proposition to encompass the whole of the relationship, and we talk about that. It's their experience with the product or with the business opportunity.
Okay, now the business opportunity, you guys have recently inked a settlement. I don't think it's been approved by the court yet, but it's near approval. Talk to me about what that settlement means. I mean, roughly defined, you all have neither admitted nor denied any wrongdoing, all that usual jargon. But you have made pronouncements about changing the way you do business, particularly for salespeople in the field. So what was Amway potentially doing not in the best way before, and how is it changing today?
Sure. Well, first of all, you're talking about a number of years ago, and what we said is we weren't doing as good of a job as we could have by training and really helping people using technology, using the tools that we had to train people, to bring everybody up to a level about how they talked about the business and how they talked about the products. And so we made an investment in that. You go on your mobile technology, you go on your smartphone, you're going to be able to access for free data, information, training to be able to bring you up to speed. And I think, if anything, we'd look back and say we weren't doing that well enough. We wanted to invest in that, and we wanted to make sure we told our story in a way that everybody could follow. So when they were talking about the Amway business, we were leading. We were talking about our business. We were talking about our products, and it became easier for all of us to be consistent in telling the story.
And it seemed that part of that issue was that, at least from the court's view, it was a movement towards selling the opportunity as opposed to selling the product, which has been a long-standing complaint about Amway and the opportunity, as you put it. Just tell me about that.
Sure. Well, it's being really clear about what the opportunity is. And we want to help people be very clear. And we were talking earlier, a lot of people who joined the Amway business, I think about 50%, we were saying, some of our studies would say they came in just to buy some products and to sell a few to some friends and family. And about 30% came in to make a little extra money. And about 20% came in to look for a more full-term opportunity. So we need to talk to that whole range, not just to this person about what they can make full-time when somebody may be interested in something else. And so being more clear about what the opportunity can deliver and what it's going to take for it to deliver in that way.
Especially what it takes. I think there's a lot of time when people are talking about the opportunity, they don't necessarily say that it takes a little bit of hard work.
Yeah.
It's not an easy thing to become an Amway distributor and to be successful as an Amway distributor.
Right.
And I think it's very important that people know it's going to take a little bit of work to do that. And I think that's where, if anything, you see some of the, if there's disconnects, there may be a disconnect there. But as far as the opportunity's always really been the same, that unless you sell product, you can't become successful. There is no success without selling product.
Well, it's really interesting. I wrote the story about the #1 Amway distributor. I think that's partly why you're here. It was interesting, the email I got from people, it was so divided, you know. Amway, and you guys have lived with this your whole lives, right? Being part of the founding families of the company. It was so divisive that, you know, people said, how dare you be sucked into this pyramid scheme? And on the other part was, thank you so much for exposing us to a great salesperson. This is Holly Chen, the #1 salesperson distributor for you guys. What do you say to people, and you get it all the time, but I think it is a fair question, and one that has to be addressed about the company, just that people have that feeling that somehow it's not quite fair to the people in the field. So how have you lived with that, and what do you say to that?
Well, I think the first thing you say is we've been around over 50 years. This has been a business opportunity that's tried and true and proven, you know, in the United States and in markets all over the world. And I think, you know, what we've tried to recognize in our earlier discussion is we want to do a good job telling people exactly what it is, how they connect work and reward. And if somebody feels that they didn't have that connection and they thought it was going to be something different, they thought they were going to have a different experience than they did, and then we feel badly for that. And so our focus is to make sure everybody, every customer, every prospect, everyone who joins our business has a good experience. And we're always challenging ourselves to make that experience better.
Right. Steve, any thoughts on that?
And just to follow on what Doug says, there actually are a lot of people that we meet over the years that used to be in Amway, now are going on in their lives to do something else. They come back to us and they say, you know, I remember my time at Amway. I remember I learned how to sell something. I learned how to connect with other people, and I had a great experience. I'm not doing it today, but the experience I had 10 years ago, 15 years ago is something I've remembered my whole life. If we can make that kind of connection, that's what we try to do.
Do you guys have personal rules of sales? You know, I think, Doug, you used to directly head the North American sales operations. That's right. It's a selling company. What have you guys learned about sales individually, personally?
You know, I think sales is something we do all day long. It's something that you do all day long too, because you have a great organization that you work for and you're always talking about it, and I think Doug and I do the same thing. But for us, our day really is looking at all of our distributors around the world, talking with them, trying to help them become successful. I don't know exactly how you define that or how you talk about that, but to me that's selling the Amway business even to the Amway people.
But is there one little rule that maybe you learned from your fathers or a brother or someone in the business overall? Come on, there has to be something. You carry it in your wallet.
Well, Steve touched on it. It's about people. It's about fulfilling their needs. What do you want? What are you looking for? It's about building a relationship in a way that you connect with somebody to say, how can I help you? It's about being of service. And so I think you've had that experience where you see somebody who is, you know, genuinely her whole life has been out there trying to say, what can I do to help you? And that's what Steve's talking about, and that's what leaders in our business do on a regular basis. And our model is built that if you do a good job helping somebody else, then you'll be just fine. If you serve the customer, if you serve a new prospect, and if we together work with our sales force, then the business will be fine.
Do you think that people have lost the ability to sell? And I don't mean Amway particularly, but just generally, this country, I don't know why I'm returning to this theme, but I am, has it gotten soft, that people have lost the art of salesmanship? If you go in and buy a pair of shoes, or you go to buy a car or a computer system or what have you, have we lost that thing that Dale Carnegie instructed us on 100 or however many years ago that was, 80 years ago?
I actually don't think that we've lost it. I think that over time, though, it's changed a little bit, and we've found that with ourselves that, you know, we kind of joke a little bit that we kind of consider ourselves one of the original social networks, because 50 years ago, we had people connecting with people. But what we didn't have 50 years ago that we have today is technology and a way to connect a lot faster, a lot quicker, and a lot differently. I think that's how selling changes as well. I think how we sell is probably, or the act of selling is probably not so much different, but how we sell with the technology that we use today does make it a lot different.
So what do you mean by that? I mean, personally, I think I can make a better sale with you if I'm looking at you eye to eye. Where does technology enter into that equation?
Technology comes in as if you have any sort of a mobile device right now. There's an Amway app that you can push, and if somebody asks you about a product, you can actually push a button and say, here, look at this, and it'll show you, and it'll talk about the product, it'll tell you what it is and what it can do. I think that's a different format and a different way to be able to sell something that 50 years ago we just didn't have.
Right. And we can bring them together. You know, you're saying being face-to-face is still critically important.
Absolutely.
And what technology is the tool to enhance that relationship.
Right. Or you can stop salespeople from making the wrong claims in a way, right? Which frankly is an issue.
It's a huge issue because you can get to the facts right from the company. It can be validated and verified, and kind of going back, that enhances the overall experience, and so people can have trust and they can have confidence in the product and in the opportunity.
What percentage of the end products are sold to the general public and not to the Amway salespeople directly?
Well, that's always a challenge to kind of find exactly what that number is, but it's it's a large percentage. Probably our research probably about at least half or more would go to an end user, and ultimately all of it goes to an end user. Even if somebody happens to be a distributor, they're their own best customer. So I would say, on a strictly speaking standpoint, 100%, because everyone at the end of the day is a customer and they see value in the product, or else they wouldn't buy it.
Right. Now, India, you guys have had some troubles there in India. They don't like what you're doing. Can you give us an update about that market?
Well, I was there more recently than Steve, so I'll give you the quick update. The business is growing. The business is very strong. Our reputation in the marketplace remains strong. We're like we were in China years ago. The method is a little misunderstood, and there's different states who are asking questions about how we operate, and whenever we engage and talk with them about how we operate and what we do, we have people go, okay, I'm starting to get it and understand it. But the nature of the marketplace there, those questions may get asked in different places, and there's no one simple way to answer it for the whole country. And so we have to keep explaining and answering and talking about it. And what we do is we make adjustments. We did in China, we did in the U.S. We'll make adjustments in how we do things in India to make those questions less.
Might those be? I mean, we saw in the U.K., I think you agreed to publish a list of sort of the graduation rates, if you will, of certain levels of the sales force. And that showed, hey, it's tough to make a lot of money. You can make a little money, that's easy. But making real big money, you know, the odds are frankly not great. What kind of adjustments would you plan or suggest in India?
Well, you know, this isn't a business of odds. This is a business of work and reward. And so in India, one of the things that we've done in some other markets as well is, you know, when the business started, you need to buy some literature, buy a couple products. So we've said, you know, technology and the business has changed today. You don't need an entry fee. It's kind of like a Facebook, the social network. Come on in, join, buy a product. You know, you can access all the information that you used to have to buy online. So we waived all of our entry fees. We waived renewal fees. We used to have to do that sort of thing because in days past, there were a lot of costs associated with that. Those costs have come down to a point where we can change that. And generally, that's the main thing that people say is the risk of joining a business opportunity low or zero. And we can say it's virtually zero.
Okay, let's pivot for a moment. You guys obviously are active in the business community in your home state, Michigan, in the country overall. How would you guys describe the current state of the U.S. economy and the way in which business is being received, in which it can do what you all think it needs to do?
Well, I think we all know that the economy took a dip.
We all know. I'll agree with you on that one.
So we're there. But I think we also see things improving. And so for us, we can see it in our business as well. You know, a lot of times people look at us and say, well, maybe when the economy's down, your business does better. Maybe when it's better, your business goes the other way, and we've never found a correlation one way or the other. The only thing that we do find in the Amway business is when the economy kind of goes down, sometimes the order amount goes down a little bit. But we've got more people coming into the business and being interested. And so we kind of say, look, if people are interested in coming into the business, they still have a positive outlook. If they have a positive outlook, then we think there's optimism inside the country.
Right.
And that's kind of how we feel about where the U.S. is right now.
And do you agree with the Republican critique of President Obama that he is hostile to business?
Well, we think that it is really important to make sure that the business that you have in your own country is very competitive with the rest of the world.
Right.
Doing business around the world now, having a platform that's equal for everybody so business can compete is very important.
Right.
And as long as our group in Washington allows us to compete with the rest of the world, we're going to do just fine.
Well, that's a very diplomatic way of saying I think you agree with the Republican critique. Is that fair to say?
I think that we need to have an equal platform, a level playing field with the rest of the world.
If there are one or two things that you all would like to do for the U.S. economy, and specific things, what would that be?
Well, I think, you know, when Steve talks about a level playing field, it looks about what that goes back to is the environment that's created. You know, what is the tax structure? What is the regulatory structure? What is the general mood of the country? Is business good, and is it part of our future going forward, or is business bad because it did something here or there? And you pick, you know, one or two examples. You know, Steve was the chairman of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce,
That's why I'm asking the question.
Representing, you know, and so what you see is so many people in business doing great things every day in their communities, for their employees, for their customers. And so what you look for is an environment that kind of recognizes and says, you know, business is really all about people. It's not just numbers. It's all about people. And if we create an environment and we say this is a way to help people with good products, with good jobs, with opportunity for themselves and for their families, you know, that's the environment that we want, and frankly, that's the environment that you see in a lot of countries around the world.
Right. Well, I think that it's probably a fair observation that President Obama has been certainly not embracing of the business community, and at times seemingly hostile. He would probably argue the contrary. And we see where unemployment is today. I just don't know where the fine line is. You know, is what's happening in America now, is the problem regulation, or are there bigger macro changes going on around the world that you guys are seeing, or in some ways a part of, where labor markets are getting so globalized, and the cost of labor, and in fact the knowledge to, in a lot of ways, drive products and change, is being distributed in a way that's forcing pressure on the U.S. economy. So regulation versus macro factors, where do you guys stand?
You know, it's hard to pinpoint either one, because I think they're both important. I think definitely the more regulation, the more hurdles that a business has to go through, the less competitive they are. The less competitive they are usually happens to be in one particular country versus another. So you're always comparing yourself as to how easily you can do business compared to your competitors in another country. I think that's really important, that we make sure that we allow American business to be as competitive as possible in the global arena, because that is where business is today.
Right. And I think the United States is well prepared. The creativity, the ingenuity, the ability to solve problems here in the United States is still very, very present. And so I think sometimes it's what we do to ourselves. And we joke about that in our own business. You know, sometimes the things we do, you know, hurt more than help. You make decisions and they don't go the right way. And so you say, wow, what we really want to do is unleash the entrepreneurial spirit. We want to unleash innovation. We want to unleash that creativity and not put up barriers that get in the way.
It really gets back to entrepreneurs everywhere, because the entrepreneurs really, I think, are what drive a lot of the new business ideas, drive a lot of the business kind of going forward. And if you want to generate new business, you need a bunch of entrepreneurs that look at optimism towards the future. And the more pressure they have on them through taxes or regulations, the more difficult.
But you know, I've been thinking about this. Can we call what we call entrepreneurship is what we what we really mean to say is that there aren't any other jobs for people. Entrepreneurship is just another label for, perhaps in certain cases, an economy that isn't as vibrant as it needs to be. Because not everyone's a great entrepreneur. We want to believe that they can be in this country, but again, the odds say that they're not.
Not everyone's a great entrepreneur, but if you go back in history and you look at where the majority of jobs have always been created, they've basically been created through entrepreneurs.
And the other thing, you know, we talk inside the company of unleashing innovation inside the company. So maybe in a different context, you can have an entrepreneurial spirit, you can have an innovative culture inside a company that allows it to go to the next level. But going back to some of the other conditions, is that business then willing to invest in that new idea? Are they willing to take that risk? And if the environment is unclear to them, or the level or the playing field isn't level, that's a much more difficult decision for a company to take, than saying, wow, there's a good idea, let's try that. There's a good idea, let's try that. That can make our business better.
Right now,
and that's a little bit what's happening right now, because there is a bit of uncertainty as to what the future holds and what it's going to look like, how it's going to go. There's a resistance to maybe want to invest a little bit towards the future, to wait and see. Different reasons for different businesses in different places, but that makes it more difficult.
All right, so if we put together the facts here, the Amway and your respective families, long-time, some of the biggest donors out there to the Republican Party, Republican candidates. Mitt Romney's from Michigan, you're from Michigan. You guys have to be Romney guys, right?
Generally, yes.
Generally,
yes.
Okay.
The answer is yes. We've indicated that.
And could you, maybe in your own words, as someone who's been involved in Michigan, and I'm sure come across Mr. Romney, he does not seem to be connecting with a lot of Americans. What would you tell them? Some of them are watching to Minute 20, are watching this. What would you tell them of why Mitt Romney would be a good president?
Well, I think he has the tools to do the job. I think he has experiences that are necessary. I think he's has a track record, and he's been able to demonstrate his abilities to get that done. It's like, we kind of look at it. There's a lot of good people running in all different areas. Who's going to be the best?
Steve, any thoughts?
Same idea. I think it's not only the tools, but you look at some of the ideas moving forward, some of the ideas to create and allow that entrepreneurism to be successful, and I think that Romney has that.
Okay, so sum it all up. You guys are in for Romney. We'll see if he can connect, because he's not doing.
We'll find out.
He's not doing it right now. The Michigan primary is tomorrow. You guys are in New York. I think that speaks volumes. You want to get away from the madness.
We will go home, though.
We'll be home tonight.
All right. Any last thoughts from you guys on where your company is headed? 17% growth, I'd say generally not sustainable of a company of such scale. I'm sure you guys would beg to differ. So tell me why I'm wrong.
17% is tough, but we've also grown 11 of the last 12 years. I think that as we kind of look towards the future, we look at that trend continuing. We've got a lot of wonderful entrepreneurs out there on the ground. Our distributors all over the world have been successful, and we're going to continue to help them, and that is really the group that drives us forward.
And I think we have an adventurous attitude of saying we can always be better. We joke, if we ever got this figured out, it would really be a good business. There's always a new idea. There's some way we could enhance it.
Right.
And that's, I think, the fun that we have of working together and working with all of our colleagues and leaders in the business, is to say, what can we do to make it better?
Okay. Well, I'm sure you'll have plenty of opportunities to do that. Steve Van Andel and Doug DeVos, thank you for joining us on The Big Interview. I'm Dennis Berman of The Wall Street Journal.